Hi Paul. For those that don't know too much about you, would you like to give us a brief background?
I grew up in Trinidad, Trinidad and Tobago in the West Indies. My family's still there. And I fell in love with calligraphy when I was a child. And that gave me quite a lot of interesting activities to do as a child. So reading up about Egyptian hieroglyphs, looking at manuscripts in encyclopedias and different types of writing. And yeah, it was quite a sort of fascinating experience growing up.
In terms of doing your own research and teaching yourself, was it hard to come across the information at that time, or?
Not many people knew what calligraphy was in Trinidad,
right.
And it was quite difficult to find books on it.
Mm-hmm.
But you could find lots of illustrations of maps, and on historical maps you find historical calligraphy, as well as seeing things like botanical illustrations and wildlife illustrations with tons of copperplate script on it. So that was quite. It was a different way to look at calligraphy, to find information, rather than going to a book on calligraphy, but looking at different source material.
Okay, and during that period, how many hours were you practicing calligraphy?
2 or 3 hours a day.
Just by yourself?
Yeah, just pick up a pen, sit down, do some writing, have a look at it. I have a very obsessive, compulsive nature, so
right. Even at that age.
Even at that age, so I
right.
would. When I sat down to do something, I would look at it and then do it, and then look at it again, and try and work out why it works or why it didn't work.
Yeah.
So that sort of gave me a really interesting experience with calligraphic script work without having a teacher.
Right. And how did your parents or your family respond to this obsession?
My mother was great with it.
Okay.
You know, it meant that I was out of trouble and sitting in a corner with a pen.
Yeah. Okay. And at what age would you say you decided that you'll make this into a profession?
When I lived in Trinidad, I had my calligraphy business in Trinidad.
Really?
So I did some work.
At what age?
My first commission was about 15.
Okay.
So it was to write out some scrolls for the government.
What types of commissions do you enjoy the most? Would you say the corporate stuff that you get through, or?
Well, the corporate stuff that we get through, I think we need to split that into a few categories. Mm-hmm. We do some work for banks, which can be fairly standard,
right. And
we do some filling in certificates for schools and universities. And then we do some work for some of the fashion industry. Mm-hmm. And I think when you work with the fashion industry, it's a whole different ball game. We just did a lot of work we worked on all of Tom Ford stuff for London Fashion Week, and we do all of Burberry stuff. It's interesting to see how they work and how differently they work. But I mean, I've worked with Burberry for forever. And I worked with Tom Ford when he was at Gucci, so it's it's a long-term sort of thing that you develop these relationships with people.
Right. And in terms of Burberry, what type of work did you do for them?
Well, again, for Burberry, we address all their invitations. We do place cards and plasma envelopes and escort cards for their events. And Tiffany's one of our oldest clients as well.
Oh, okay.
So our two oldest clients are Joe Malone and Tiffany.
Right.
And it's really quite interesting, especially now that Joe. I mean, when Joe sold to Estee Lauder and they took over Joe Malone,
right,
the brand, we still do a lot of work with them. But I've recently been in touch with Joe Loves, and she's opening soon as well. And so it's really quite interesting to start working with her again, especially having worked with her for 20 years.
Yes, and it will be a new challenge because it's a totally different
brand. And she is wonderful. She's such an inspiration, Joe Malone. Really, really wonderful.
Brilliant. So would you say you enjoy more of your corporate stuff or more of the intimate?
Oh no, it varies because you said intimate. I mean, you do become quite intimate with a lot of the corporate people that we work with.
Right, yeah, of course.
And I guess not being British, I have a very different way that I deal with my clients.
How do you deal with your clients?
I mean, I am nice with them if they follow what we do.
Yes.
But as soon as they start messing us around, I lose my temper.
Okay.
And in a lot of the instances, I can get away with it because, they're like, oh yeah, he's a crazy artisan. You let him shout and scream and we'll get what we want anyway.
Can you discuss the various languages and scripts that you work on?
Most of the scripts that we do in the studio are Western scripts that are English based. do have non-English clients that want things written in languages other than English, like German, French, Spanish, Swedish, Icelandic. And then we have the non-Western European language set, which deals with Cyrillic scripts, like the Russian script, which is written in Cyrillic, or Kyrillic as the Russians call it, Georgian, lots of really odd scripts. And we work in Greek as well. I work in Greek. And then there are Far Eastern scripts that I work in, like Chinese and Japanese and Tibetan, Tamil.
Is there a language that you can't write in?
No. You put a language in front of me and I can structure it. I see language as graphic structure. You know, and it's very different when you see something as a graphic line. If you know what a tool can do, and you've spent a long enough time understanding how tools work, it's about applying that tool in a specific way to create that thing.
Right.
I might be able to read what I'm writing, but I can accurately produce its calligraphic form in that language.
Okay. If someone wanted to emulate your success, what advice would you give them?
I would tell them to do something else.
Why?
You know, working as a calligrapher is not easy. It can be really stressful. People look at you do calligraphy and they say, oh, that's really nice, you know, you must have such a good job.
Yes.
They don't think that when a client calls you up and they want something done, the client's not thinking about the fact that the ink needs to dry. They're thinking about, you press print and it's done. They don't see it from the same angle that we see it from. And so they're very demanding. And as a result, you are always under pressure. You know, people look at the work and they're like, oh, it's really nice. And they think that it's so calming. And you've seen what it's like in the studio.
Yes.
It is anything but calming. But that is work for clients. Sometimes I stay back late at night and practice for an hour and do something that I
Even
really...
at this stage, you still practice?
Of course.
Why do
you must practice. And if you don't practice, you don't get better.
Yeah.
And you know, you can't stay as good as you are just by not practicing. Yeah. And there is always something to learn. Especially when you look at minutiae.
What legacy would you like to leave behind?
I guess the thing that I would like people to see and to understand is how lettering works, how writing works, and how important writing is for us to do. You know, when you write a letter to someone, you immediately change the way that they feel. You capture your specific personality at that time in that letter for that person, and that's really quite important. Now, it's quite difficult to sort of to get people to write, and that is a problem. But I would just like people to see that writing doesn't necessarily only have to be on paper either. I mean, I write letters on my iPad, and I email them to clients.
Oh, nice.
But they're still written.
Yeah.
So I think it's just about getting people to go back to writing.
What's the culture of your company?
The culture of my company? Precision, accuracy, historical inspiration, and producing something that makes people smile. To produce something beautiful, something that is so beautiful that somebody sees it and it really touches them. That's I mean, I really, really enjoy that. I love that.